Hello and welcome. It is I, it is me, it is marginally sick alfsvoid. On the weekend I was spending some time with my friend and her son was a little bit sick, and despite his sickness, because of his adorableness, I was still carrying him around, and in the process of me carrying him around, he managed to sneeze directly into my mouth, and so 4 days later, here I am, recovering from the brink of a deathly cold. So I might sound a little weird. If I do, I'm sorry. I can't fully hear myself because I have blown my nose so much that I have blown my ears out. So hopefully this will sound okay. We'll see. But with that being said, let's dive right into our April Q&A. We will begin with our patrons' questions, and then we will proceed to some of the other top voted questions. Question number 1. What are your thoughts on universal basic income? Do you think it could be the solution to unemployment caused by AI? From what I know of universal basic income, it has had some successful implementations in different areas. However, I think trying to apply that to an entire nation would be extremely difficult, especially considering that you may need to raise taxes, things of that nature. I think that a universal basic income is more or less putting a band-aid on a larger problem. I don't think that it's the solution to some of the problems that will be brought on by AI. I think a better solution to job loss from AI would be creating better jobs, or to create jobs that are less menial that machines are taking over. Of course, however, actually creating those jobs, what those jobs would be, is a more difficult question. But for the time being, that's my feelings on that. Number 2. Do you have any tips on finding a career that fits your personality and strengths? I currently have a decent paying job, but it doesn't challenge me enough. So that's a really interesting and difficult question, I think, because I think underlying it is the question of whether you want to find challenge and meaning, fulfillment, and these sorts of things in a career or in your extracurricular outside of your career life. And from the sounds of the question, it seems like you wish more to find those things within your career. And that's pretty difficult, right? It's not like all these jobs out here, or the majority of the jobs in the world, exist to fulfill you, because that's not their purpose. They exist to provide a way to overall better society or contribute to society, but more so above that, they exist so that you can make money to have a life outside of work. However, if we wanted to go with the question of how to find a job that challenges you and fits your personality and strengths, I think the better underlying question to that is, what interests you, or what kind of jobs are available that align with your personal interests, right? Because I think the more you're interested in something, the more likely it's going to align with your strengths, right? Because it's your interests, you care about it, you can put things into it. And what you're interested in is kind of like an extension of your personality. So while I find it really difficult to suggest any particular jobs because of the purpose of jobs as to what would fit with you, I think the question perhaps you should ask yourself is, what are the things you're interested in that are related to your education, and what kinds of jobs do those things that you're interested in translate to, and how can you find them? Question number 3. Existentialism or absurdism? Do you subscribe to any of these days, or find any of them more convincing than the others? No, I don't subscribe to either of those things, but I do enjoy readings in existentialism. I'm actually not too sure what would qualify as absurdism. I'm not sure if, for example, Camus would qualify as that. I think perhaps Camus' The Myth of Sisyphus would qualify as absurdism, of which I do find interesting. So the way I would put it is, I do find readings in each of those things interesting, but I don't exactly subscribe to any particular ideology within them, or of them, or derived within those fields, just as I generally try not to subscribe to ideologies at large. Number 4, if a book publisher offered you a book deal, would you accept it, and what would be the topic of your first book? I think that if I were to be offered a book deal, I would likely accept. I think it'd be dumb not to try. But as for what I'd write about, I'm not sure I'd want to write some, long, extra philosophical text. I would probably first want to write about something I know best, which would be myself. And since I've had a, long and somewhat ambiguous path to becoming a more or less but striving toward virtuous person, I would probably write about that path, because I think that all of our lives are, twisted and tangled, and the path to becoming the best version of yourself is interesting and possibly never-ending. But that's probably something I'd want to write about. It maybe even just for myself, like a purge, that maybe others could find something beneficial in also. Number 5, do you know about nonviolent communication and Marshall Rosenberg? No, I don't, sorry. I'll look into it. Number 6, do you follow any diet or... No, I don't. I do work out 2 days on, 1 day off, and I more or less eat a lot of fruit, and I eat meat, and I just try to eat things that are good, but at the same time, Mama loves her cheesecake and treats, and I'm also trying to bulk up a little bit. I'm trying to build some muscle in some particular places. Number 7, what are your thoughts on mysticism, psychedelics, shamanism, spirituality, and similar ideas? We will discuss psychedelics later in this Q&A, but on the other aspects, I'm generally suspect of them, or I don't take them all that seriously. I mean, I think there are some mystics that can shed interesting light on things through metaphor and things of that nature, but I think that a lot of these things can quickly become dogmatic or based on things that people don't fully understand. For example, the New Age movement that tries to be spiritual and claims it's based on, quantum physics or quantum mechanics, when really people are building these systems of belief or ideology when they aren't quantum physicists based on quantum physics. So, like, people that have only a layman's understanding of these things, trying to build, spirituality and whatnot off of them, I find that very suspect. I mean, admittedly, when I was in my first year of university, I even fell into some of that stuff, like, based on a layman's understanding of those issues, and I later came to realize through discussion with some friends that were in physics and so on that some of the presuppositions in these views were deeply flawed, and so yeah, I think they're suspect. I think they're very questionable. I think that the true spirituality is skepticism or agnosticism, in my opinion, but that's just me. Oh my god, good lord, this fire is getting hot back here. Whew. Whew. Oh, let's strip. Just kidding, let's not do that. Number 8. As an entertainer, what type of people would make up your ideal audience? I don't see myself as an entertainer, and if I did, I don't know that I would have an ideal audience, like specifications of people that I would prefer watch my videos. I think I would just say that I like to make videos, and anybody who likes the kinds of content that I produce would be ideal to see it. Number 9, what do you think that the role of government is? To protect life and liberty. Number 10, in your opinion, what is the greatest threat facing Western society? Ourselves and neoliberalism. Number 11, could the constant availability of distracting media, for example, parentheses, video games, TV shows, movies, affect our society in a negative way? I think, yes, of course it does, because what all these things do is provide us an escape from the reality we exist in, or a break, or entertainment, instead of us working together, for example, to make a world where we don't want to escape, or we don't need such things to entertain us. So, in other words, I would say that such entertaining media or distracting media distracts us from creating this is gonna sound super cliche and awful, but a better world, a more fulfilling world for all of us. Number 12, What do you think about gardening and growing your own vegetables depending on the region you live in? Sometimes I wonder why school system has all this sort of extracurricular activities, but no one even mentions about this subject. I think that's a really interesting and good comment. I think if you live in a region where you're able to grow your own food, that's brilliant. I personally do not live in such a climate. For 6 months of 12 months, it's freezing cold outside and terrible. So I would love to live somewhere where I could do that. One thing that sometimes people ask me why I would choose to continue to live in a place with this kind of weather. All of the critters and snakes and spiders and freaky things that, are where it's warmer more of the time. No. I do not like these things. I will live in the cold without all of these poisonous snakes and spiders and gross things. Yeah. I know one not to be stoic about it, but yuck. But the latter there about the school systems, I think that's a really brilliant point. I mean, I can understand kind of why they wouldn't teach that kind of subject matter in somewhere like Canada, but ultimately I think it would be extremely fruitful for us to generally all have that kind of knowledge. So let's say, for example, that some sort of, apocalypse or something of that nature were to spring forth in the world. I think a lot of us would be completely screwed because the vast majority of us in schools, for example, and even older adults, really have no capacity or understanding fully of how to maintain or grow their own food in that way. At least I would think. That's my own approximation, not an absolute fact. I would have to, poll the majority of civilization to find out who knows how to, collect and facilitate their own food growing. Number 13. In Italy, it is now in force of law that deny non-vaccinated children to go to school. The situation is pretty dramatic here. A lot of parents decided to not vaccinate their sons. Do you think it's fair, or the government should no matter the guaranteed the education? Okay. I think because we're from Italy, we have a little bit difficult grammar, but that's okay. I'm pretty sure that recent laws have changed in Canada as well on that matter. I think it's a really dicey situation, right? Because on the one hand, if you don't vaccinate your kids against things that we have known effective vaccinations for, and then that child goes to school and it gets infected somehow and infects other children, I would be extremely livid if such a person were to infect my children. I mean, I don't have kids now, but the thought of someone for unscientific reasons refusing a vaccine, then their child getting ill, hurting my child, all of them possibly dying, is horrible. But then on the other hand, I think it's also very questionable territory when the government is able to force you to do something or to inject something into yourself. I think that's a really dicey situation. I think, though, in current circumstances, we have to, assume that at least on the vaccine issue and the science behind it, that it doesn't cause autism, it's not gonna fuck up your kids any more than the disease will if they get it, what they're being, vaccinated against. So at this time, I would say, no, vaccinate your kids. I think the government's right to force you to do that at this time, although it is dicey, like I said. Number 14. Do you think the far left is starting to lose momentum in their influence over things, such as identity politics and other social justice issues? Why or why not? No, I think the far left continues to be influential. I think a lot of institutions, policies, and things of this nature are taking swing or given momentum from the far left continually, but at the same time, I think that the somewhat insanity of the far left will perpetually cause conflict with those who don't see things that way, or in other words, I think there will always be a sort of push and pull between opposing forces in social collective life or between opposing views. I don't see that phenomenon dissipating anytime soon. I think that's just the nature of the struggle of sort of socio-political historical life. So even if they do start to fade, a new face will form in the face of the current far left. Number 15. What's your opinion on psychedelic drugs like LSD or DMT, and would you take them? I am all for people taking psychedelic drugs who are of a sound mind or of an already healthy mind or a mind rational and capable enough to handle such an experience. And I think that they are interesting for individuals to be able to see what these drugs can bring forth from the human mind to bear witness to. I have tried mushrooms in university. It was a wild time. I had a very good time. I had a really scary time for part of it. I had to retreat to my dorm room and hide beneath my covers with a flashlight and entertain myself with my astronomy textbook because things were swirling and moving and I was seeing people's, what appeared to me as auras. It was a lot. It was a lot, okay? I'm all for it. I would do them again in the right environment and with the right people. Number 16, what is your opinion on public school and how do you think we can improve it? So public school was insufferable for me as a kid. It was so painfully boring. I suffered a lot in public school in terms of grades and whatnot because I just couldn't pay attention. I don't know, there's so many people, I was always so far back in the class, and it was I'm always beside a window, so let's observe the clouds. I think if I personally had the ability to alter our public school systems, I would make classes a lot smaller. The average class size, I think, from what I remember when I was in public school, even in high school, it's 30 kids, 35 kids, 25 kids, from 25 to 35 kids. I think that's way too many kids. I think you should cut that to 15 kids per class. So that would give more jobs to teachers. I don't think it would kill us collectively to invest more in our goddamn education to make it more effective, have better quality teachers, higher standards for teachers, but more of them so that there's more engagement between students and between the teachers, and so that kids like myself back then aren't left to just drift away, right? It's pretty easy to just drift away when you're around 30 other kids. The teacher's probably not paying that much attention to you. But if there were only to be, 15 kids in a class, that's pretty intimate, the teacher sees you, you see them, you're aware of their awareness of you, and therefore probably more likely to try to pay attention. It'd probably be easier for the teacher to keep students engaged with that number of students. I think, in my opinion, that would be altogether better for students and for teachers, really, to create better jobs for teachers, even more effective jobs for teachers, higher standards for teachers, more jobs for teachers, and so on. So that would be my opinion, but of course my opinion's biased by my own experience. Number 17. When did you feel confident enough on your thoughts and understanding of philosophy to openly talk about it? Well, as most of you I think know, I have a degree in philosophy and honors Bachelor of Arts. That's an interesting question because all throughout my education in philosophy, I would always be the awkward little, annoying front and center, ask a shitload of questions. And so I feel for the majority of my experience in philosophy, I've always been openly talking about it or always be openly prying about it. And often for undergrad, I would go to get-togethers with other philosophy students where we banter with each other and argue with each other. And so I was always in an environment where I was able and encouraged to talk openly about it. So then when it came time to talk or when I made my YouTube channel, it just felt natural to talk about it. It's maybe I'm wrong about some stuff, but I'm sure other people can point it out in a discursive manner. So I don't know, just came naturally through the experience. Number 18. What do you enjoy outside of philosophy? I love music. I absolutely adore music. I enjoy watching films, of course, but above all else, I do enjoy nature. I enjoy scenic hikes, scenic ventures, anything really explorative. Is that a word? Maybe. We'll just make it one. Anything outside, anything, exploring abandoned houses was always fun. I've done quite a bit of that. Abandoned places, abandoned town hunting. Human ruins are always extraordinary and exhilarating. I'm just kidding. Not extraordinary and exhilarating, but pretty fun and interesting. It's that kind of thing. I'm a simple person. Most of my time is taken up by work and now YouTube, and I like to smoke a lot of weed, to be honest with you. I do enjoy marijuana, like a healthy amount, not a lot, but like healthy, as someone would have a glass of wine in the evening, like that. Number 19, music. What music do you like? Genres, artists, top 10 artists. So again, to remind those of you, if you go to my homepage, to the playlist tab, I made for you guys a playlist of all of my all-time favorite songs over the years. And I will update that, whenever I come across new music, so feel free to gander that. Number 20, favorite TV shows. So my favorite TV shows, ones that are over now, I loved True Blood, cheesy as heck, but I loved True Blood when it was on. It was a great time. Also a show that's over now, Dexter. I really enjoyed Dexter. An ongoing favorite, like every single American Horror Story season. Another show that I found recently, it's older, but I watched all of it and it's still ongoing, I think, is The 100. I love that show. That's some good shit right there. Every single episode, moral dilemma after moral dilemma. It's exhilarating. I love that show. I also really enjoy The Magicians. It's a little bit teeny for me, or teeny in general, but they pretend to be teens, but these people are probably my age. Really great show. I really like The Magicians. I also don't hate The Walking Dead. I'll watch it, it is what it is. That's all I can remember right now. Number 21. This is a long one, or second to last. How do you maintain your confidence and line of thought when presenting to a group of people? I'm your age, I'm an interior designer, and I was just in my first big meeting today to design someone's multi-million-dollar house. As I was pitching my design process, I totally froze up. I suddenly became hyper-aware of the situation's absurdity and my own inadequacies, and I could barely finish my sentence. I finished the presentation strong, but the middle was totally thrown off, and it was very obvious that I'd been overcome by sudden anxiety. I don't know if I'll get the job, but either way, that mini anxiety breakdown is going to stay with me the rest of my life. How do you avoid this? My brain is so wired to an existential and philosophical level that it was as if I snapped into that mode when I needed to remain present in the moment. Any tips or bombs for my agonizing soul? So I think this is one of my favorite questions. I'm not sure if I fully grasp it completely, but I feel that I can relate on some level. I mean, you relate this here to anxiety, this moment of the realization of the absurdity of the situation you're in as an anxious breakdown or a mini anxiety breakdown. I, in my experience, wouldn't necessarily call my experiences like that anxiety. I would just call them a moment of the realization of the absurd, which I have had. I random moments where you're talking to someone or doing something. I don't know how to explain it. It's just like I've had like a feeling of disconnect, like just a true, almost ineffable understanding of just how absurd what's going on really is. And for me, like I said, it doesn't feel right to really call that anxiety, but rather realization or recognition. I guess you could call it anxiety, maybe you mean it as anxiety, I'm not sure. But in terms of those kinds of moments, I don't think there is something you can do to prevent them from happening. I only think that you can push yourself through them, right? So in the moment where you realize just how absurd everything is, you can think of it like a game you're playing, and that in that realization, you just press forward or keep going, keep playing the game, keep, testing, keep going forward with what you're doing, and then, reflect on the absurdity later when you're with the privacy of yourself. I realize it can be difficult if that feeling becomes then attached to a feeling of anxiety or not knowing what to do or fear. That's more difficult, but again, the only answer in any kind of situation like that is just to press yourself forward, right? To understand and recognize those moments when they come up and just keep going. That's easier said than done when you're having an actual anxiety breakdown. That's hard, right? It's really hard to catch yourself in an anxiety attack and keep going forward. It's the hardest thing you can do. I've even been in situations like that in my early years where all of the sudden, I was doing okay, but then anxiety just struck. Not even, for me then, it wasn't even a feeling of the absurd, it was just, it's almost ineffable also, it's just a lack of anything to come forward. And I stood there awkwardly for, felt like a long time. In reality, it was probably only a minute, but when you're standing in front of people, it's a long minute. Eventually, I got myself together, and as best as I could, as cringy as it was, pushed through it. The most you can do, though, like I said, though, I'm repeating myself, I know, but you just gotta take the cards you're dealt and just keep playing. You just gotta push forward. That's literally all you can do. One thing I found that helped me in my towards the end of my issues with anxiety was meditating somewhat, rough meditation, before I had a presentation or something important like that to do. So one of the things, this might be very silly to other people, but what helped me the most in those moments what helped me the most before such a presentation was I would, sit down, close my eyes, imagine how I wanted the situation to go, and also reflect on, simulation theory or theories that would speculate that other people have. For example, if we refer to philosophy of mind, absent qualia, the idea that all of my fears and things like this about what these people are thinking aren't really happening, and this is just my own projections, my own issues, and there's nothing really occurring beneath the surface of these people. It sounds really silly, but it to reflect on that and to try and go into the situation with that mindset or with that calmness that would come from that really being the case was really helpful for me. That, and also repeating my presentations on my own probably 10 times so that I knew it like the back of my hand and I could just zone into it and do it. So that for me was really helpful. But when it comes to that feeling of absurdity, I think that detached from anxiety, just the recognition of absurdity in one's circumstance, I think that's a very powerful experience, or it can be. I think that serves to make you a deeper, more reflective and understanding person, to be able to have moments like that just strike you and that you can't control, really. You can consciously think about how absurd everything is, but if we're relating in the same way here on that feeling of sudden absurdity, I don't think that's really a controllable moment. It's just something that strikes. And so to have that, and for me to be like, oh, you've had that and I've had that, hey, I wonder how many other people have had that sudden striking thing. And just, that's a cool thing. I think that's interesting, deeply interesting. So I'm not sure how helpful that is, but the best I can give you is push forward. And of course, you're not alone. There are other people that have these things too and feel this way too. So for whatever that's worth, from me to you. Last question, number 22. Would you like to live forever or stop aging and become immune to all diseases? I'm not sure if you mean that as an either or an and or just and, would you like these things all together, or would you like to live forever, or I'm gonna assume you mean would I like all of these things, that is, to live forever without aging and being immune to all diseases. My answer is no. I think that would be a brutal experience to see everyone you know and love die I mean, yes, it'd be interesting to see the entire progression of humanity over time, but then we could also get a little, you know, annoying philosophically and be like, what, would you live through the expansion of the sun and the explosion of the sun, the destruction of the earth, you know, like, to what extent are you indestructible, how much do you have to live through? But also, the main reason that I wouldn't want this is that while I'm a skeptic and agnostic, and I would lean toward nothing happens when you die, it's just the end of your brain, you know, you just cease to exist, I don't know that for sure. No one knows anything like that for sure. Anything could be possible when nothing's 100% certain. So I would like to live the natural course of my existence and, you know, see or don't see what happens, you know, see if anything happens, and if nothing happens, then I'll never know, but I'll never know that I don't know. So, you know, like, would I love to stop aging, but also live my natural progression? That would be great too, I'd accept that. Just be, you know, 26 forever, that's great. Maybe wind it back a little bit and be 21 forever. No, I'll stay 26, 24, 25, fuck it, somewhere in that area. I'm just kidding, I'm not kidding. No. Just live my natural progression, that's my answer. So, okie doke. So I hope that my sickness was not too unbearable for you guys, and that I sound half decent enough to listen to all of this. And yeah, that concludes all of our questions, and I will see you soon. Our next video will be on moral dilemmas. So I was hoping to have that posted by tomorrow, but honestly, I've had to stop between every couple questions to like cough and blow my nose. So I think that we're gonna have to wait a couple more days before I get that posted so that I can, you know, not sound terrible and actually make it through a video without, you know, coughing and sneezing and blowing my nose. So I will see you guys soon enough.